This is a bit of a 1776, but it's the digital version, meaning that uh, meaning that we don't need to form a George Washington militia and attack the armies of another force. We do need to form a digital militia, in effect, of people who are hardened against fake news and can therefore dehypnotize the people who are not hardened against it yet. And then, of course, our technology people need to, as MIT did, coming up with a voting app and other apps to give us transparency, and we can survive this. The history of the world before the internet just can't look like the history of the world after the internet. There isn't any way that those should look similar. So I can certainly see how a civilization that did not have instant and good communication could fall apart in a number of ways. But we have this, because of our communication being so good now, we're a little bit self-healing. If you look at how our economy can recover from just about anything now, you could, if you took the economy of the United States and go back to pre-internet days, one good punch, and you got the Great Depression. It's just one punch, boom, depression. But at the moment, because we're so much smarter about what to tweak and when to tweak it and how much to tweak it, and everybody can communicate and get on the same page and all of that stuff, I think we're in a world where we can just re-engineer when we need to, and we need to. So we're in exactly a point when our commuting patterns are changing, the way we eat, the way we entertain is changing, healthcare is completely changing. The cities will probably, who knows what's going to happen to the cities, but you have all this change happening, and all of it requires re-engineering. So if you have a world which is now connected by the internet, and we could all sort of work as one, that's a really different situation. Let me give you just the smallest example, all right? Just the smallest example. And some of you saw this in real time. So in the spring, when the coronavirus came out, the president was looking for people to suggest, what should we do that isn't already obvious? Are there other things that the administration should be doing? Now, one of the most phenomenal things I've ever seen in my life, I mean, really just like goosebump kind of stuff, is that lots of people responded to that. Just ordinary, smart citizens who said, I've got an idea. I'll bet you didn't think about this one. Submitted it to people who they knew could get that information to the administration. And I watched it happen in minutes. As in, somebody would send me an idea that I thought was worthy enough that the administration should see it. I would send it to my closest contact that could make that happen. And I would sometimes hear within minutes that the chief of staff had just looked at it and had a comment. In minutes, that was happening. And it didn't happen once. This was a system that just sort of spontaneously grew up and did that. Now, one of the things that I sent in as a suggestion was to get rid of the limitations on telehealth across state lines. Because we had this ridiculous situation that you couldn't talk to a doctor who practiced in another state on the phone. How crazy is that? Now, that was a perfect example. The administration, if they had not been prompted by a member of the public, in this case, it was just something I had this weird knowledge about. If I had not sent that, was it going to happen? Maybe, but I don't know that. I'm just using it as an example of how this mass communication that we have allows you to quickly adjust to even something as big as a pandemic in a way that you couldn't have even imagined before. I mean, you can really get a lot done when you're connected. So in my opinion, the economy doesn't have the same risk of shock it used to have. because we have more information, better communication, and also the system itself doesn't have that risk anymore. So I would say that the internet makes all of our history sort of non-predictive anymore. And that's the good news. Here's a statement that I think sums up where we're at. I tweeted this. I think the fake news destroyed America. And so, unfortunately, the fake news has this weird power where they can break something, but because they're the news, they can simply report that you broke it. Imagine if, when you were growing up, you had siblings. Imagine if you had one sibling, just one of your siblings, who had the power of the press. So you had a sibling that could go break something, go break a window, and then when mom and dad came and said, hey, who broke the window? Your sibling who broke the window said, well, I've been the designated news, so I'm the news organization of this family, and the news is that my sibling broke that window. And your parents say, okay, you're the news, so it must be true. And then you punish that other kid. Now, would you think that was a good system? Would that be a good system that one of the kids could simply blame the others for their own crimes and the parents would say, yeah, that's a good system. Fine with us. No, you would not think that was a good system. But that's what our press has turned into. They can literally destroy, well, I would argue that they destroyed the republic. Literally, we don't live in a republic anymore. It's some kind of bullyocracy, cheatocracy, I don't know what it is. But it's not anywhere close to a republic. The fake news pretty much destroyed that. Now, I think we'll get it back, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But at the moment, we don't have a republic. We have something like a zombie republic that has, some outward manifestations of looking like it came from a republic, but we don't have a situation where people vote and the will of the people gets translated into their elected representatives who make decisions on their behalf. Nothing like that's happening. That's how it was drawn up on paper, but we're not living in that system, that's for sure. And imagine this. If the fake news had never told you that half the country were neo-Nazis supporters, let's say neo-Nazi supporters, that's what the news told you for 3 years. Do you think that had any effect on the divisiveness in the country? Being told for 3 years that half of us are neo-Nazi supporters, which, by the way, if you're new to my Periscope, it's not actually true. Turns out that the number of neo-Nazi supporters is vanishingly small among every population in the United States. But not according to the news. The news told you it was rampant. Must be at least 74 million of them. Imagine if the fake news had been credible enough that it didn't destroy your trust in every other institution. Because I would say that when the news fell, and the news has fallen, right, and can't get up. When the news fell, and you couldn't trust what you thought would be the gatekeepers of information, when that last thing fell, that kind of took everything with it, didn't it? Now, maybe you don't process it that way. You're not consciously thinking, oh, if the news is fake, that must mean everything else is fake. But I don't see you could separate those things. Because once you learn that the news is literally made up, what are you going to believe about the news's report about science? What are you going to believe when the news tells you the scientists say this is true? Well, you're not going to believe it. Because you don't really get to see the science, right? When was the last time you did science? Maybe never. The thing that we think is science is somebody else telling us what the science was. The thing we see is the somebody else. We see a person telling us what they think they saw in the science. We never see science. We see some interpretation of a person who's trying, or sometimes not trying, to tell you what they saw. Now, if the news can't do that for you, or you don't trust it to do that for you, then you also have no information about science. None. You have reports, but it's coming through a mechanism, the fake news, that has no credibility. So the dumbest fucking people in the world are the ones who say, follow the science, and it's a good thing I know what the science is because I heard it on the news. That's the dumbest fucking thing you can say in 2020, is that you understand science because somebody who doesn't understand science explained science to you. That's all you have, is people who don't understand it telling you what they thought they saw, which isn't even close. It's all you got, all right? Now, you didn't really feel that until the gatekeepers collapsed, right? Until the news became completely undependable, as opposed to something that sometimes makes mistakes. Then you realized, holy crap, not only can I not trust the news, but they're the only source I have for what science is telling me. So science is gone. It's just not something you can trust anymore because you don't have any access to it. Now, if you had access to it, and you were the kind of person who would be rare, who could judge it, and you had enough wisdom, and you knew the area, and you could tell what was missing, or maybe what they left out, you could look at the numbers. There are people like that. There are some people who could have a pretty valuable opinion about the quality of some science. But you don't know those people. I don't know any. Can your neighbor do that? My neighbor can't. I mean, I haven't checked, but I don't think so. Doesn't it feel like politics became a video game? If you play video games long enough, you get used to things happening on a screen and people are getting hurt and beating each other up and it's drama and stuff, but then you just walk away because it was just something on a screen. And the news has become that thing. It's this something on a screen for most of us, if you're not directly, in the riot or something. And like a video game, we all get to play, weirdly. Because if you can tweet or do a social media post, you're playing the game. Maybe you have a small influence. Some people have bigger ones. I have a relatively larger influence, bigger audience. But to me, I have to say, I sometimes catch myself playing it like a game. You know what I mean? Do you ever feel it? And maybe even when you watch me, you feel it. That there's something that's entertainment about all of this. It's fun, just like a video game. Except that it has the downside that it's also real. Because I feel as if the Antifa, the protesters, etc., it's very much like dress up, entertainment. It's sort of replacing sports because there aren't as many sports on TV. It feels very video game-ish. And I think that's to our detriment because we're dehumanizing each other, and then on top of that, we're wearing masks for a year. We're hiding our faces from each other for a year. The risk of dehumanizing each other is enormous. Now, I haven't seen that become like a world problem yet, but I'd keep an eye on that one. Here's what I think, though, is our solution going forward. In my opinion, the Republic is gone. So we don't have to worry about, hey, might we lose the Republic? That's gone. And it's gone with certainty because the ballot counting in key cities were not transparent and they were not witnessed, and that was done by force. So that's our government. Our government was the force that drove the witnesses out of the office. Our government was not the vote. The government is the force. Because if they could do that, and obviously they got away with it so far, that's the government, right? I mean, I feel that's fair. That doesn't even feel like a stretch. The government is what happens that creates your leadership. What happened was some force that made the system non-transparent, and that caused Biden to get elected. That is your government. I don't know what you call that, but it's not a republic or even close. Then on top of that, you add the media influence, the the changing of the rules, the political BS. Definitely wasn't a republic, but here's the thing. Could we get it back? Do you want to get it back? Do you even notice? Here you are, here I am. I used to be in a republic, or I thought I was. Now I'm not. What's different? What's different? My coffee tasted exactly the same, but I'm not in a republic. So the first thing you need to ask yourself is, does it matter that much? The next thing you need to ask is, how long have we not been in a republic? Because I doubt this was the one election where elections could be stolen. Does that seem likely? You know, if you believe it was stolen this time, would you really believe it never happened before? If it happened this time, it probably at least was attempted every time. Doesn't mean it worked every time. I think Trump might have surprised them with, higher votes than they could cheat in time. But you'd have to assume it happened. Here's what I think is the fix. Engineering. Engineering, and in this case, I guess re-engineering, is the fix. Let me give you an example. We have a big problem with the vote. Could you engineer a solution that would improve credibility? Yes. Yes, I think MIT has a voting app. I believe it's blockchain based. I haven't looked at it, called Votes, V-O-T-Z or something. Now, would we just take one of these apps and just put it into service in the next election? I don't think we're there yet, but we could run it in parallel. Find a bunch of voters who are willing to vote in person and also use the app, and then just see if it's different. Do at least one live test. But, so there's an example where engineers could simply invent stuff that solves a little bit of our problem, not all of it, right? Then what about adding auditability to the rest of the system, because it probably won't be all app. Could we do that? Yeah. We know how to do transparency, etc. What about re-engineering our government? Well, it looks like that's going to happen, because I would imagine that if things go the way it looks like they're going, which is always a gamble, but if things go the way they should be going, I would expect Republicans will own the Congress and own the entire government in 2 to 4 years. That's what I would imagine would happen. What about maybe emptying out the cities and just finding a better way to live? I think that'd be good, right? So if we fix the voting, I think we can fix the republic. But until we do that, we're just not a republic. But we could be one as easily as implementing a reliable technology for voting. So it's not even, if you were to look at the history of problems and sort of rank them, like how big is this problem? How big is this problem? Well, losing the republic sounds like the biggest problem in the world, but probably isn't. It probably isn't. We'll probably just still go to work. The economy is a little bit separated from all of this business. The economy doesn't really care, except interest rates and some stuff like that. But it doesn't care what system created it. So I think the economy will chug along, and we'll figure out how to fix the vote, and we probably will recover and become a republic. Probably close to 100%. I think our odds are really good. Let me give you an update on World War III, which some of you probably don't realize that we're in. Now, you may say to yourself, how could we be in World War III? Nothing's blowing up. Or at least there's not enough blowing up that it looks like World War III. Well, here's the thing. Imagine using a nuclear weapon against China or Russia, or vice versa. Will that ever be a good idea? No. Imagine China sends its tanks to attack Russia or whatever. Would that ever be a good idea? Nope. Under no scenario will it ever make sense, if you're being rational. Under no scenario will the big countries fight each other directly militarily, because it's self-insured destruction. But they can hack each other apparently all day long. They can do propaganda, they can do dirty tricks. As long as it's hard to know who's doing what to whom, there's no limit. Apparently all those limits are off. And those tools, while they used to be strong, but not strong enough to necessarily overthrow the United States or necessarily overthrow like a major country, they are now. They are now. If you ever believe that those propaganda, persuasion, disinformation, dirty tricks, if you ever thought that they weren't that strong, and maybe they could only work in a third world country, South America, where you're trying to overthrow a third world country, but even then, you probably have to arm the rebels, right? So even if you're talking about, overthrowing some small country, you probably at the very least need to put some weapons in the hands of the people who want to take over. But we're in a world where the power of those tools, the propaganda, misinformation, etc., because you can test it so quickly. Okay, we put that out. Nope, nobody retweeted it. Try again. Boop. Because you can rapidly test it, it's gone from something that could maybe take over a country or destroy a country to something that will. All right? It's the question of whether it's strong enough to take down a major power. I think that's really clearly yes at this point. Very, very clearly yes. And you wouldn't need to fire any bullets or drop any bombs. You could just take over. You could destroy their economy with disinformation. You could destroy their system. You could destroy their trust. And it looks like that's what's happened. So, although I don't, like you, I don't have the ability to say, oh, that thing happened because of these dirty tricks. That's how they work. The reason dirty tricks work is you don't know where it came from, and you don't know where this tweet came from, and is this disinformation, and where did that come from? You just don't know. But we do know, and I think we can say this with absolute certainty, that the United States and China are in a hot war, and have been for some time. A hot war of these non-kinetic things, from persuasion to dirty tricks. Likewise, I assume China and Russia are probably fighting it out under the hood where nobody sees it. I imagine Europe is deeply in the war. I imagine every major country is either being affected or is on offense, or both. I assume that we're giving back to China as good as we're getting. We just don't hear about it in the news because it's spy stuff. So World War III is raging right now. It's raging. What will protect us? Well, some of it is, a lot of it is adjusting as you go. So, if you're in a war, you can have a plan, but as is famously said, all war plans disappear as soon as the first shots are fired, and then all hell breaks loose. So, I don't know if there's some specific plan that we need to win World War III or to be protected or anything. We'll be adjusting and working on it as we go. But I don't know that it could end. If you have a kinetic war, we know how to end those. We're not good at it, but at least we know how. We end it by it becomes so bad that one side sues for peace. You meet, you sign some documents. You know how to end a real war, the old-fashioned war. But how do you end a propaganda war? Because you can just say it wasn't us. So, here's why I think that there's a gigantic shift coming, and you're probably participating in it right now. The only thing that can protect you is people who are not on the take. That's it. And I think that means independent journalists and independent people who have the benefit of these tools where they can have a big reach, but they can help you sort out what is real from what is not real. Because the news has abandoned that business. They even started a fake fact-checking business to really reinforce how not in the business of facts they are. They've all created fake fact-checking. which is just amazing to me. And so you're going to have to rely in the future on people, I'm not going to say me, but people like me, which you can say, it doesn't seem like he's getting paid by somebody to do this. He's not working for China. Not running for office, not going to run for office. I've got enough money. More money is great. Everybody likes more money. But there are some people, there will be your independents, who, if they don't become stronger in terms of their messaging and power to, dehypnotize you, unhypnotize you, without that, I think we're lost. So it seems to me that ensuring that our social media platforms will allow independent voices to continue to be heard everywhere, without that, we're in real trouble. But I think we'll be able to maintain that. I think we'll be able to keep that. So that's the way we're going. We need to educate ourselves as voters. I would recommend my own books for that, these two in particular, Win Bigly and, Loser Think. Because the better you are at spotting BS, and that's what both of those books will help you do, spot things that aren't true, but that are being presented as true. You need to build that into your talent stack so that the citizens can take over the country again, as we have before. So this is a bit of a 1776, but it's the digital version, meaning that we don't need to form a George Washington militia and attack the armies of another force. We do need to form a digital militia, in effect, of people who are hardened against fake news and can therefore dehypnotize the people who are not hardened against it yet. And then, of course, our technology people need to, as MIT did, coming up with a voting app and other apps to give us transparency, and we can survive this. How do we deprogram people we know? A proven protocol. Now, a lot of people have asked me this because people want to deprogram their spouses, and I want to help you on that. But here's the obstacle. If you're trying to deprogram one person, as opposed to just things you spray into the social media, but if you're working with one person, here's the hypnotist's rule. And this is why it's hard for me to give you this advice in this meeting. If you're working with one person and trying to hypnotize them or persuade them or anything in that domain, the biggest part of the technique is the observation. So you try something that works, generically, and then you see if that worked for this individual. If it does work, you do more of that. If it doesn't work, you say, well, better try something else. So without that iterative part of the process, you standing with your spouse and you can iterate in all the right ways, I can't give you like the kill shot. Say, just go to your spouse and say this sentence and that'll reprogram it. So that doesn't work. Yeah, it's sort of a lengthy process of iteration, etc. That said, there are some things which are better than other things. So I would attack whatever is their strongest point that they're married to. So rather than go through all the things that they believe, just find that one thing that they're sure is true, and see if you can convince them on just one thing that something they thought was both true and important isn't true. It would be important if it were true, but it isn't true. So do that. Because what that does is it allows people to change their own mind. If you attack all of their belief as a whole, like Democrats are bad, socialism, then that's no good. That has no impact at all, right? You gotta find a weakness or a specific target. Target that thing for destruction, a belief. If you have a belief that's really core to your whole package, it doesn't, the rest of it doesn't necessarily fall apart automatically, But the rest of it you believed in the same way that you were certain about the thing that just got debunked. So if you can take out somebody's strongest belief, then they can sometimes talk themselves out of the rest. So that's a little bit of a technique, but like I said, I would not expect you to go forth and immediately deprogram your spouse. It's sort of an interactive, long scale kind of a thing, and frankly, doesn't even work for most people, no matter how hard you try. Do you see a state reversing after signature verification? Well, let me reiterate my prediction. I believe that history will confidently say someday, not anywhere, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but I believe history will eventually come to believe that the election went to Trump and he didn't get the job. Because the fake media is so strong, they can just say Biden got the job and everybody will act like it was real. Now, if you don't think that's real, you might be surprised. The media can simply tell you that a thing didn't happen, and 60% of the country is going to act like it didn't happen. That's the world we're in now.